Blog Talk Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf. And I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and of course, joining me this morning is none other than one of the hardest working ladies in professional golf, and that would be, of course, LPGA professional Cindy. Cindy, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Ted. It's great to be here.
Well, Cindy, I know you've been real busy. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but let me just remind everybody. Of course, we're live every Tuesday morning here on blogtalkradio.com. And that would be at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and that's 8 a.m. Central for those of you in Central Time. And you can certainly call in live during the live broadcast into the program. The number, of course, is area code 347-945-5855, or you can email any questions or comments to womenofgolf@gmail.com, or you can contact Cindy Miller personally if you want to get more information about Cindy Miller Golf at cindy@cindymillergolf.com. Also, as I said, tuning into the program, you can do so by visiting blogtalkradio.com, and you can either just go directly to the link with a / Women of Golf, or up in the search key at blogtalkradio.com, you can just type in Women of Golf, and that'll take you here as well. And also, don't forget, if you miss any of the live broadcasts on Tuesday mornings, you can go back into our archive on-demand section by simply visiting that link, and you can just scroll down and you can visit any of the previously aired shows. It's kept there nice and neat in order, so you can certainly go back and right to the beginning if you've missed any of the earlier shows or any of the more recent broadcasts. You can certainly do that, and we appreciate you tuning in every week, and thank you to all of our listeners for your support and good words. Cindy, I know we've got a great gentleman going to be joining us here in a little while, Jon Stabler. He's the co-founder of GolfPsych. And I know that you were actually just out in San Antonio with him and, of course, his partner, if you will, Dr. Deborah Graham. Tell us a little bit about your visit out there and what you were doing.
Well, I struggle with being able to play up to my potential, and I tend to have a very busy mind. As you said, I'm one of the busiest golf pros there is, and I shift states a lot, and I'm spinning plates. And when you do that, you tend to tense up. Therefore, I try a little bit too hard. And so I went out there for selfish reasons because I wanted to help myself play and perform a little better on the golf course. And I also wanted to be able to teach this. So as you know, we did the Own Your Game series back in May, June, July. And we used my GolfPsych personality assessment to go through the 8 traits of great champions, which Jon will tell you how that all came about. But they used LPGA and PGA Tour players to find out if there were truly any traits that champions had more than, people, multiple winners on the PGA and LPGA Tour versus the people who won once or twice and the people who never won. They came up with these 8 traits. So, long story short, I have measured myself up against the traits and how do I fit in and what can I do about where I might have a weakness and can you change that and get, if you will. So I went out for selfish reasons. I call myself the living laboratory. I like to go try to fix me first, and then once I find what I find, I share it with my students and help them get better as well. Because I have discovered that if you are transparent and you are honest, needless to say, we all struggle with this game. This game is very painful. So that's why I went out there, and I'm very excited with what I learned, and I passed my certification test, so now I'm going to be using GolfPsych with my students. and we will explain how that can happen when Jon gets on the program.
Right, and congratulations, by the way. I'm sure it was a little grueling at times, but I know, Cindy, that you have it within you to do whatever you set your mind to, and that's really what the key is. And Cindy, you raised a valid point about really sort of taking this challenge on yourself first. And I think it's important, in whatever you do in life, but particularly as a golf instructor, I think you have to be able to sort of dive in there first, and that sort of helps you to gain your own experience that you are able to pass on to your students. I think it's very difficult if you try to discuss or do things that you're really not, as efficient in or proficient, if you will, and try and then explain that to your students. So I think life experiences, and obviously you've played in quite a few tour events over the years in your career, as well as teaching golf, and so you obviously have a hands-on, if you will, ability and experience, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that you're able to draw on, and then be able to articulate that into some of your teaching lessons as well. So kudos to you, and very well done.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to practicing what I've learned. What I found was that the harder I try, the more I use my left brain. The more I use my left brain, the less my right brain can play. And
right.
And we all, I think the whole conditioning of the golf industry is to, think more. People are trying to teach with TrackMan. The week before, I was at the LPGA Regional Conference, and which was great. We had great speakers, learned a lot of great stuff, and I realized that you need to use science and, what's the club face doing when it meets the ball. But on the other hand, the more you think about that, the less your right brain can play, and that's detrimental to me because I think and try way too hard.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that. Let me just, Cindy, stop us in our tracks here just for a quick second. Something I forgot to do. I just want to let everybody know here. Obviously, I'm broadcasting down here in the great state of Florida. Cindy, of course, is back up in Buffalo, New York. But I just want to let you know, down here in Florida, we're experiencing, especially in the northwestern part, some severe weather. So for any reason, if we happen to get interrupted in the broadcast due to inclement weather and end up having to cut it short, we will certainly invite Jon back and finish off whatever we don't get accomplished today. So I just wanted to bear with us here. Everything seems to be holding. The ship seems to be sailing well right now, but I can hear a little bit of distortion in the background. So I know that we're probably getting some effects from the weather. So I just wanted to apologize first off to any of the listeners out there that may be hearing that, and hopefully everything will continue to go. We'll be able to complete the program. But for any reason, if we do get cut short, that's the reason why, and we'll certainly try to pick up. But Cindy, one of the things too that I wanted to talk about very quickly here with you is, the golf industry has to evolve like any other business, and I think that organizations like GolfPsych are certainly doing that. And you mentioned something off air that they're sort of the silent giant. Explain a little bit about what you meant by that. Well,
you've probably never heard of GolfPsych, but they've been around since 1981, 82, 83. And Jon will tell you how it all came about, but they have measured and worked with over 380 LPGA and PGA Tour players. Right. Now, they can't tell you who they all are because Dr. Deborah Graham is a licensed psychologist, and with the HIPAA law, she can't reveal,
right.
Someone wants to share, I went to the shrink, and yep. They call it the John Wayne theory, not everybody wants to say, my head's whacked out, With me, that I'm okay with saying, I'm wacky, but a lot of people don't want to share that. And,
right.
And example being Rory, I have a clip from Rory being interviewed by Bob Costas after he won the U.S. Open, and Bob said, what did you learn from the Masters experience? That was the year that he shot 80 the last round of Augusta, and,
right.
and then won the U.S. Open. And he said, he put him on the spot. And Rory said, I learned some things about my game and about myself, and I put them into practice, and it worked here. And Bob Costas says, do you want to share those things? And Rory said, absolutely not. No,
yeah.
I don't. So, in other words, I'm going to let you in, but I'm not going to let you in all the way. And
right.
so, you need to be aware that some of these players will not reveal who they work with, and the other thing is it's very competitive out there. I don't want you
sure.
to know what I learned so I can kick your butt. So
yeah, exactly.
They haven't been in the forefront of tour players talking about it, but they have won every major championship there is. And 21 of the players they've worked with have won 31 majors. So,
wow, that's very impressive.
So and the proof is the fact that, again, we'll discuss it when Jon gets on the air with us. Dr. Deborah Graham did her PhD study, thesis, whatever you call it that you have to do, with the tour, the LPGA tour. So she went out on the tour and she was trying to do a research project to see if champions had different traits than other players. And what they found were that, yes, of the 16 traits that they tested, the champions had 8 traits that were above and beyond anybody else. So multiple winners on tour. So this is absolutely tried and true factual research data.
And I'm sure too that in the beginning for Deborah it was probably not very easy to get a lot of the players to open up. I'm sure once they learned who she was and the fact that she really was a for lack of better words, a shrink. I'm sure a lot of them were very reluctant to sort of delve in and talk about some of their personal thoughts and feelings, especially as you said, not being sure whether or not it was going to be out there for everybody to sort of pick at. So I'm sure it was not easy for them in the beginning to do that, but obviously they've developed a rapport on the tours and have been able to solicit a lot of the players' input, which has become certainly very valuable information. And now you've helped pass it on, and Jon is going to pass it on a little bit further to some of the listeners and hopefully let them draw on some of the experience from the information that they've gathered in their programs.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, and we've mentioned this several times, but particularly when you were doing the Own Your Game series here, I think a lot of people really, especially certainly not at the professional level, but at the amateur level, don't really appreciate how important the mental side of golf really is. I think they focus so much, and I think, Cindy, you, I'm sure, see this all the time with some of your newer students. They're more focused on how they're hitting the ball. They're not really thinking about it. They're just sort of doing whatever they think they should be doing. And a lot of times they get misinformation, from watching things and not really. And this is where somebody like yourself that's got that experience can really help them along and guide them in the right direction.
Well, we become vulnerable
to,
I call it the committee of they. And we listen to outside sources, who may suggest, oh, well, you're looking up, your arm's not straight, and your numbers aren't good on this TrackMan machine, and you need to do this and you need to do that, and we can get confused, and Jon calls it conditioned to listening to the wrong things, and then you might start thinking, well, I can't do this, and this is too hard, and I can't think all these thoughts, and you're right, you can't, and that's kind of what I found when he worked with me. I've worked with them for a year, but it was always on the phone, and so this, I said to him, holy cow, I should have come out here last year. I should have come out here 30 years ago, but being aware of, stop trying so much.
Yeah.
And again, we'll discuss that when he gets on the phone, but how many people are out there doing all these left brain things, and your left brain can't play golf. Your right brain has to.
Right, exactly. Well, Cindy, I know that Jon is going to be waiting here in just a moment, so why don't you go ahead and just let the listeners know a little bit about Jon and a little bit more about GolfPsych, and then we'll bring him on.
Okay. So Jon Stabler is the co-founder of GolfPsych. Along with being a co-researcher and co-author in the personality study of golfers and the resulting book, The 8 Traits of Champion Golfers, Jon has developed and conducted the GolfPsych group schools and instructor training programs. He's worked with numerous players and college teams, including TCU, SMU, A&M, and Baylor. Jon invented the patent-pending Mind Meter used in GolfPsych schools and programs, and it enables GolfPsych clients to quickly learn to manage emotions and obtain optimum tension levels for golf. Their mission is to help people through their work, their instructors, and their tools, using golf as our channel to be happy, healthy, and successful in all ways possible. Their GolfPsych system is based on over 30 years of tour research and tour experience. We have helped over 380 PGA, senior PGA, and LPGA tour players. Using these results and experiences, we have refined our system of mental skills training techniques to get the best results in the shortest time. We have used these methods to help thousands of golfers of all ages and abilities to reach their personal goals. I would like to welcome Jon.
Jon, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ted. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Jon.
Good morning. Well,
Cindy,
welcome to the Women.
You were just here. It feels like you barely left.
Are you sick of me yet?
No, not at all. We had a great time.
We did.
Jon, Cindy and I have been just talking a little bit, and as you may or may not know, earlier in our broadcast, Cindy brought a great series based on some of the work that you and Dr. Deborah Graham have done in her own program, Own Your Game, and we talked with some of the, let some of the listeners know a lot of what you've been working on, and shared some of the information with them. But we want to obviously have you on the program to talk a little bit more. But let's start off first. First off, how did you and Dr. Graham sort of meet, and how things came about with GolfPsych?
Well, first of all, you should know that Dr. Graham and I are married.
Oh, okay, well, that helps.
And so we first met in Southern California at a tennis club that we both joined. We kind of had a glancing meeting the first time. And then we also met through a video dating service.
Wow.
Now, this was back in 1988, so that was kind of leading edge at that time.
Very cutting edge, that's right.
Yeah. And but, 25 years later, we're still happily married, and it worked pretty good.
Well, that's fantastic. And how did you guys come up with GolfPsych? What was sort of the thought behind that, if you will? Just share with the audience a little bit about that.
Well, Deborah started it, the original concept, and that was she needed to do a study, a dissertation, and to earn her degree in psychology. There were no sports psychology degrees at that time.
Right.
And she was looking for something that would be interesting, and she didn't want to just work with, a few college athletes because they're pretty easy to get. She wanted to do something really interesting. And she came up with the idea of doing a study of golfers, and then she chose to focus on the LPGA, the best women's golfers.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked the question, I wonder if there is a difference in terms of personality between the frequent winners on the LPGA and the other LPGA Tour players. Is there something that they're different and enables them to be successful? And so she was fortunate enough to hook up with Carol Mann, who was also in Southern Cal at that time. And Carol heard about what Deborah was trying to do, and she said, hey, you know what? Nobody pays attention to the LPGA. This would be good for us. We should do this. And she got the other players to participate, and Deborah got more than enough players to have a statistically valid study. And through that study, she discovered that on 8 personality traits, out of 32 measured, on 8 of them, the frequent winners were a lot different from the other tour players. And I mean, a lot different. It's not just more likely or something. The frequent winner group measured there, and the other players did not. It was that clear. So she discovered the 8 personality traits. Now, I didn't meet her for, quite a while, till 1988. And when I learned about that, I thought, oh, man, that's really interesting. And then she'd always loved sports. She'd been working with athletes ever since she got her doctorate. and she also had a regular counseling practice. Well, that's fine, but it also means you're working with all kinds of bizarre behaviors and individuals. But then there's the golfer group, golfer demographic, and we say, what if we focus on golf? What if we take that study and go after the golf market and see what we can do there? And I was in the plastics industry at that time. I was doing very well, and so I could bankroll this effort. And so you could say that GolfPsych was born with that concept, with that idea in 1988. And then we determined we needed to do a study of the men as well because, the golf world was mostly male at that time.
Right.
And we needed to see if it was true for the men. And it was. It turned out the same 8 traits came out for the men. So all really interesting. And here's the challenge question. Why are those top players the top players? Is it that they all have this perfect swing that the other players don't? No. Is it that they all have these clubs that nobody else can get? No.
Right.
Do they all work with just one swing coach and nobody else can work with that swing coach? No. Are they built, is there a certain size or something, fitness or strength level for golf that makes you more? No. Do they work harder than the other players? No. We know that for sure.
Right.
So it turns out that these personality traits are the only thing that separate those frequent winners from the other players. There's a thing that they have in common that you can't see. And so that's been the foundation for our work, and that's one of the reasons we've been so successful, because we recognize where you are and then help you learn to operate like they do when they play golf. Go ahead, Ted.
What I was going to ask you just kind of raised an interesting thought here, Jon. From doing all of your research, both you and Deborah, over the years, you've obviously, as you said, you've narrowed it down to these 8 traits that stand out. Are you able now, watching some of the newer players come on, are you able to identify the players that sort of characterize those traits more effectively now? Do you see that without even really having to talk with them? Are you able to see that now?
For us,
yeah.
Watching golfers on TV or at the tournaments, the pros, we can easily see who has it and who doesn't.
Right.
It's pretty obvious, and I think one of the very best examples today of optimum mental game, of operating in an optimum way on the golf course, is Rory McIlroy. He's just he's beautiful as an example of the way you should do it. When he's playing his best, he looks pretty carefree. He's not standing over the ball forever trying to remember how to swing. He's not being super careful and deliberate. He is playing. He is having fun. He is thinking about the right things, thinking about the shot rather than the swing. On putting, he's not agonizing over his putt. He's taking his imagining and he's letting it roll. And this is all. I hope the golf world really takes notice, because he is doing it very well. And
and also
pleasing to watch Rory.
Right, and one of the things too that you see, and you raised a valid point here a moment ago about asking the question sort of why some of these players differentiate themselves, but you see obviously if they're able to get on whether it be the LPGA or PGA or even the Champions and the Legends tours. Obviously, they have a physical ability to play some great golf. Otherwise, they wouldn't get to that level to begin with. So there's obviously something else, as you have discovered through your research, that differentiates the really top players from sort of just the mediocre players on the various tours, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And while most of them continue to work on their swings, their physical skills are really good. So it's not... if you talk to those guys out there and women, you find out that there are players that are what we call journeyman pros, that have a full career and never accomplish that success of winning a tournament. But the other players will say, wow, I wish I could hit the ball the way they do. Their ball striking is so good. Yet they never win. Or they're great putts, but they never win. And so you have to look a little further and say, geez, the golf industry has been telling us for years that your swing, your skills. And I'm sorry, it's not.
Well, and some great examples, and I'm going to obviously use the men's tour, and I'm going to go back a number of years. Really, some great examples about that is really Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, and some of the more seasoned veterans on tours. And it's not really meant to be as a criticism, but Jack Nicklaus certainly didn't have the most picture-perfect swing. It was certainly a solid golf swing, but by today's standards, I'm sure you could pick apart a lot of inconsistencies. Same with, obviously, Lee Trevino had a very unorthodox swing. So if you were to base it on their swing alone, these guys should have never won a tournament.
Arnold Palmer, nobody is teaching anybody to swing the way they did.
Exactly. And
now think about a current day. Think about Jim Furyk.
Yeah. Exactly.
I am so happy that Jim has refused to let the swing doctors work. That's absolutely the right deal for him.
I am as well, and that's certainly something that I think has really, as you indicated earlier, has really been wrong in the industry for a long time. There's been such a driving force to create this sort of mechanized, picture-perfect looking swing, and there's a lot of players out there, bar none, are some of the best ball strikers around in today's game, but they're barely blipped on the radar as far as winning tournaments. So there's obviously something else that is needed, and obviously you guys have discovered this. Cindy, I want to get you to jump in here real quick. Cindy, you've just gone through one of the certification programs for GolfPsych in this last week. I want you to tell the listeners a little bit more about your experience with that. And Jon, maybe two of you can kind of coordinate on that and just sort of discuss what some of the things that you offer players like Cindy and obviously those in the teaching professional.
Well, the number one thing, it starts with your personality. Who are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What might be some things that you get tripped up on? What happens to you when you go out to play? Give us some examples of what might happen on the golf course. So if you tend to be a dominant player, which I tend to be, I might take more risk than I should, and I could be going along and be one under par and make a triple. So why does that happen, and what can I do about it? So they measure the person first. It all starts with your personality, and then you find out what can I do to help myself be better. I tend to be have a very busy mind, and I happen to be pretty tense. So those two things combined, even though I measured pretty high on the scale of the 8 traits, I'm like a bomb that's going to go off. So what can I do about it? And Jon has developed a device called the Mind Meter, and it's really the no BS of what's going on inside you. You wear this thing on your chest, and it measures your thoughts and what's going on inside you, and the higher the number, the busier your mind. And so I can practice lowering my thoughts and becoming more right-brained, if you will, when you play. And so needless to say, I purchased a bunch of mind meters so I can, number one, help me, and then number two, help my students. So, Jon, do you want to chime in and go from there?
Yeah. What you said a moment ago, Ted, where the industry has us thinking about our swing and being very mechanistic, and I call that the machine model for playing golf.
Right.
And when a player is relaxed, peaceful, calm, on the range, for example, and they're just focusing on their swing, well, the machine model can work. They can work their way into hitting pretty good shots for a while.
Yeah.
That's at call it lower level of arousal. As soon as they step on the golf course and you're going to keep score or compete, every golfer that cares about playing and performing goes up the arousal scale. And so as you go up the arousal scale and get above optimum levels for golf performance, that machine-style approach, that perfect swing, will change.
Right.
There's no way to avoid it. There's no such thing as practicing and developing this muscle memory, that a swing that repeats. I'm sorry, go up the arousal scale, and that swing changes because your big muscles tighten a little bit. That affects your turn and your timing, all of that. So the mind meter, I developed that because we needed to demonstrate to the player why the swing wasn't working, why the skills weren't working. And it's really sensitive to your thoughts. I mean, we can see when your thoughts change. We can see whether you're in the right place or the wrong place over the ball. And it makes our coaching, and Cindy's coaching, she's purchased several of them for her schools, is dramatically more effective than somebody just standing there telling them, well, you got to take it back like this, or you got to make sure your balance is like that. Because we help players recognize that they are athletic and they can swing the club without controlling or thinking about it, and they can actually do it more effectively. So it's really enhanced. Now, Cindy came here for the instructor training.
Right.
That is the program we have for coaches and teaching pros to help them understand our methods and system and principles so they can take it back to their students and do an even better job than they've already been doing. And then while she was here, we also conducted a player school. That is for any golfer. They come in on the weekend, they get 15 hours of instruction, and we take them from basically great misunderstanding of what the mental game is and how to play golf, and replace it with an understanding of what a good mental game is. We work on their mental routines with them, and we help them learn how to manage their thoughts between shots and before the rounds, and manage their level of arousal or tension so that they can perform. And we take them on the golf course for 4 hours, and they actually do it. And we videotape their play, and we wear the mind meters the whole time, and we coach them while they're doing it. And Cindy got to help out with that and see. She gets the principles first, and then she gets to see how the players absorb and accept and respond to it. And Cindy, I think you'd have to say that we only had 3 players in this weekend. We limit to 4 players in the player school.
Right.
And Cindy, you'd have to say from Friday night until Sunday when they graduated, some pretty good progress made.
Absolutely, definitely. And they all became very self-aware of what they need to do to continue to work on their thought process and their level of arousal and how to control themselves, really.
Yep. And we give them a system. We call it the online coaching system. It's a membership for a year, and it has tools in it to help them prepare for the rounds, track how they're doing mentally when they're playing, which is the only thing you really want to track, and then after the round, learn from the round. So it's not just a one-hit deal. There's a support structure, and whether it's Cindy's student or my student, when they do that online coaching and do the post-round system, we get an email, and we can see what they put in, and then we can shoot them an email and say, hey, Ted, that was really good. That was excellent, that part. Now, on this part, you could improve a little bit by doing this or that, and no additional cost for that.
Right.
And it's a way to help the player continue. If you go to a golf school, go to any kind of a seminar, a week later, you've lost 50% of the information. That's just research has shown that. So this is a way to help you continue, and this is a learning process. Those students that came through this weekend got a big boost.
Right.
Now the system will help them continue that and get better and better. It's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process where you immediately get improvement, and then maybe you get too excited about how good you're doing and your arousal goes up, and so you stumble a little bit. Well, you'll learn from that so you can take 2 more steps forward. And over a pretty darn short period of time, these players are developing a very strong mental game that will enable them to play to their ability when they compete, when they're playing for score. Whether it's a club championship or HAGA event or any kind of just match play with your buddies. You'll play better if you're thinking about the right thing.
Well, and and it's true. You were talking about earlier, going back to the mechanical side of things, and I've seen this over the years with people that I've played with, friends and so forth. And they'll have a pretty solid game, but then as soon as some competition gets in, their game just goes south. They just don't have a strong mental capacity. And I imagine through your studies, you've witnessed a lot of that with some great players, some of the tour players that you guys have dealt with that have phenomenal games, but once the pressure was sort of added on, the game just sort of fell apart. And obviously that's because they don't have a strong mental approach, if you will.
That's right.
To the process. It's pure physical. And this is something that Cindy and I were sort of talking lightly about in the beginning of the program, and what you touched on as well. The industry has really driven that very, very hard to try and get people to swing better, to hit the ball better, and more on the mechanical side. So given that, Jon, how do we, and Cindy, I'm asking really both of you, how do we as individuals in the profession, how do we sort of unravel that snake, if you will, that's been sort of let loose over the last, say, 20 or so years?
Ted, that question is more important to golf than you realize right now.
Right.
The golf industry and golf has not grown significantly at all in the last 20 or even 30 years. Same number of people are playing. The golf industry is trying to figure out what's wrong. Why people come and try it and they leave. Well, in my opinion, our experience, we're teaching them in wrong ways. The game's already difficult, and we're making it harder for them to perform. And when people don't have fun doing something, they're not likely to keep doing it. The challenge here is to help them develop their physical skills. Their swing, their short game. They need to develop that, but they also need to develop their mental skills at the same time because they work hand in hand. Good mental helps you develop your physical faster.
Right.
Too many people, I've got to get my swing down before I worry about mental. But what you described a moment ago was absolutely perfect. They work on the mechanics, work on the swing, yet when they get under pressure, it doesn't work. And because they haven't got any mental training or any mental skills, the first thing a human will do is say, well, I need to fix my swing.
Yeah.
So they become more left-brained and more focused on how they're moving the club, which makes them less athletic and will not improve their play. It only leads to worse. But they don't know. They have no way out of that conundrum. So if we can help them understand what good mental's about, and when they miss a shot, don't try to fix your swing. It would be much better to say, okay, I need to calm myself down a little bit here. I need to do some breathing. And on this next shot, I need to think more about where I'm going to send the ball instead of about my swing. And they'll play better.
Right.
Going to the swing side, that's the dark side. It seldom works. You seldom figure it out and improve while you're playing.
Well, and I can think of a couple of examples, and not really to throw anybody under the bus, but two examples come to mind for me, and again, I'll use the men's tour, Nick Faldo and Ian Baker Finch, and for different reasons. Nick Faldo certainly has won 6 majors and other tournaments now, but he was very focused on the mechanical side of his swing, and later on in his career, as pressures mounted in that for him to continue to perform at that level, he would start to sort of slide back. Ian Baker Finch, of course, had a similar problem. It was very mechanical, very picture-perfect swing, but when pressures began to mount, they sort of backslid a little bit in their games, and ultimately, now they're in the broadcasting booth, which is nothing wrong with that. But, in my opinion, there's 2 examples there that were very focused on the physical side of the game, and I think what happens, if I'm understanding you correctly, Jon, is that you need to certainly have a physical component, but if the mental component is not equal or greater, once that physical side starts to deteriorate a little bit or not, come up par, no pun intended, you're going to start experiencing problems. Whereas if it's the other way around, if the mental game is still solid, you can always adjust a little bit on the physical side if need be, correct?
Yeah, Ted, that's really insightful. I have to go back to the two examples you picked. Nick Faldo was always a pretty mechanical player. He made David Ledbetter famous.
Yeah.
And Ledbetter, of course, a very mechanical teacher. Nick, I think 6 majors and well-respected, but why didn't that continue? And why couldn't he keep it going? Well, too much emphasis on the mechanical side. It's really, really difficult for any human to focus that way, to play left-brained. I consider it the hard way to go. If you've got to swing perfectly and you've got to work on those physical skills, hours and hours and hours, be able to perform that. That's what Nick did.
Yeah.
Very old player. But over time, it literally wears you out. You just can't do it. I have to talk about Ian Baker Finch. Ian was one of our clients back in the early 90s. And we were there at the British Open when he won that major. Deborah had been working with him, and he was doing really well mentally, and he won. And then he fell off the wagon.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens when a player has that level of success is that suddenly they're in huge demand, and their time gets eaten up, and they get worn out pursuing the money.
Yeah.
And the play can suffer. And then because they're surrounded by the machine approach, and people are saying, hey, Ian, man, you're slipping, your swings, you're off the rails here. You need to work on that. And Ian got lost in that. And he, I wish he'd come back, and I wish he'd worked more faithfully on the mental side. I think you would have seen a different outcome. I know you would have. But he did, and he's ended up in the broadcast booth, and he's a great guy. We love him. But the machine model will not work for most people short term, and for all people long term. I'm sorry, it just won't work.
Yeah, because I think what ends up happening, and this I'm sure in both cases, obviously having a strong physical game. Second here, Nick certainly rode that wave for many years. I mean, he was a top number 1 player there for a few years, and did extremely well. But then once that physical game starts to slip away, that confidence level drops down. And if you don't have a strong mental capacity on top of that to really sort of ride that wave out and sort of rebuild things, then you're going to fall to the wayside. And I think that's what happens. And you can see it. There's a lot of fantastic players on all of the tours, men's and ladies. And as you said earlier, you can certainly see by watching them where the emphasis on their game is. If they're, constantly rebuilding and retooling their swing, that their mental capacity is not something that they're focusing on.
Yeah, and Ted, when you're saying mental capacity, we all have mental capacity, but it's the mental game, and it's the understanding, first of all, awareness of whether you're in the right place or the wrong place, awareness of the thoughts that are not helpful, and the ability to do something about them. It's the awareness and ability to execute a mental routine, or I prefer to call it an athletic shot process, that has you swinging freely at the ball in full athletic mode, just like we do in every other sport. Whether it's a full shot or a putt or a chip, you have to be confident and trusting what you're doing, and you have to be acting athletically. Some people call it reactively. I prefer athletically, where you're just doing it. You're not trying to control how you do it. As soon as you try to control, you actually disturb the practiced and trained patterns that you build up through your practice. And as soon as you try to control that swing, you disrupt them, which affects your ability to make good contact, messes it up, right? So knowing what to do, recognizing, you know what, I was just thinking about score, and score got me thinking about what I need to do, and that got me to change my game plan. That made me, in Cindy's case, go more aggressive right here. And, yep, I just paid the price for it.
Cindy, let me get you back in here as well. Cindy, I wanted to ask you, obviously you've incorporated a lot of the teachings that GolfPsych really promotes into a lot of your teaching aspects, and obviously I know by the Own Your Game series that you brought, obviously you're familiar with the 8 traits of a champion golfer. Let me ask you, how have you found working with some of your students, incorporating a lot of that into it? What's sort of been the response that you've been getting?
I have worked with a couple of college kids, and I can tell you that one of them broke the record at Cleveland State University, shot 72 in the tournament round. Their normal stroke average is about 83. Here's what happens. We look to improve when we're in pain, and if the pain isn't bad enough, you're probably not going to be willing to look in the mirror. And this particular student was wondering, why can I not get better, which is, exactly what happened to me as well. And so she was really very accountable. We only went over the assessment. You sign up for the GolfPsych program. It's only $200 for all the online coaching for the year and the personality assessment and the mental golf skills assessment. And so we went over it together. You get a huge report, and there's recommendations in there, which is what we did on the program with the Own Your Game. So she was very personally accountable and really worked at it, and dramatic improvement. So this really works, and that's what I was talking about. Is I said they're kind of silent but deadly, because a lot of pros aren't going to tell you where they went and who they worked with. But You're going to see a dramatic difference in their performance. And I happen to be transparent because I'm selfish, number one, and I'm a living laboratory. I'm going to see if it works for me, and then I'm going to blab it to you, and I'm going to tell everybody about it. So
right. And let's talk about you for just a moment, Cindy, because obviously, as you indicated, you've sort of delegated yourself as a laboratory rat, if you will, in a lot of the different things that you do. How has this really helped your game? What are some of the things that it's helped you to really focus on?
Well, I must tell you that I didn't do it the right way. I got my report, and when Jon said to me, Cindy, do you know that your personality, your mental skills personality assessment is better than 99% of the tour players, men and women? I was like, okay, that's great. Why do I suck? Right? And so the reason is, and I must tell you, too, that I misunderstood the mental golf routine or mental routine. So for the last year, I've been trying harder. And it's funny, why have I played so bad? Well, because you were very, very left brain. So I did not understand what I needed to do. Now I do understand what I need to do, and I need to turn Cynthia off and let Cindy play. So we don't know the effects of this yet. So you better look out, because I'm really, really, really good. You're being warned. So that... I don't know how good I'm going to be, but I know it's going to be better, and I don't know if I'm going to win, but I'm going to tell you that I'm going to have more fun playing golf. I guess Cindy's going to play and not Cynthia. Cynthia is my left brain, trying too hard, grinding it out person.
Jon, let me get you to jump in here real quick on that note, and Cindy, we know you will. As I said many times, Cindy, of course, is one of the hardest working women in golf, period, and nobody certainly goes after and adopts a challenge more diligently than Cindy Miller. But Jon, let me ask you, Cindy raised a valid point here, made some comments about not really understanding. What are some of the most misunderstood things? And then I want you to just talk a little bit about the 8 traits of champion golf. What are some of the things that, and you can certainly use our laboratory rat here, Cindy Miller, as an example. What are some of the common things that most people misunderstand when it comes to the mental side of the game?
Well, the common perception of what the golf mental game is about is pretty much focus and concentration and manage your emotions. And that's, okay, in a very large general, yeah, that's true. But there is no human on the planet that can truly focus effectively for the 4 or 5 hours it takes to play a round of golf. I'm sorry.
Right.
You can't do it. And so when Cindy said she was a grinder, she was simply doing what most people do, and that is they're thinking about the game, they're thinking about the score, they're thinking about what they just did or beating themselves up for a mistake, or they're trying to fix their swing, or they're thinking about the holes coming up, they're thinking about what the other players are doing. They're just mentally, they're so in the round the whole time that by the end of the round, they are worn out. I'm sure many of the listeners can agree with that at the end of the round, they're just tired. You want to take your head off and put it aside for a while. Well, that's symptomatic of a player that's been focusing too much, of working too hard, of thinking about the wrong thing. And
Wait,
so
you know what? I got to tell you, this is great news, because here's what happens. The harder you try, when you don't get the results, you then internalize it and you think there's something wrong with you. And so my biggest question that I want to answer for myself is, why don't I do better? I mean, yes, I've achieved a lot of great things, and I'm not whining. I've played on the LPGA Tour, I play on the Legends Tour, but I really want to perform better. And it's like, what's wrong with me? I hit it just as good as everybody else. So now I have an answer. So if you're in pain and you seek to get better, I must tell you that this program is better than any other program that I've ever been through. And I've been trying to fix Cindy for a long time.
Cindy, and it's not unusual for the instructors that come to us, she's one of those that's out there always learning. Whatever the latest thing is, she's going to check it out, because she wants to get better and she wants to help her students. And we're really happy that she came through the program. Back to your question, Ted, what other things? Well, one shot at a time is a nice concept, but no players without coaching, without our instruction, really understand what that means. And they really can't do it. They can't just play the shot and then turn their brains off for a while, but that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
Play the shot and them do a really good mental routine, not a great physical pre-shot routine, rather a mental routine. Play the shot. If it's a great shot, excellent. If it's not, then they can ask themselves some questions to stay on the mental side. But then when that's over, you really need to take a mental vacation from the round. It's very valuable. Most players get in trouble between shots. So I think we all follow the Ben Hogan model of playing golf. I mean, that's the way we've been taught, and that's what everybody sees. And they say, well, Hogan was focused, concentrated the whole time. Well, I'm sorry. I would bet, now I didn't test him, we haven't tested him, but I would bet a lot of money that the man measured extremely introverted, extremely sober, which is a more serious-seeming individual, and extremely tough-minded, which is an individual that's very selfish and self-centered.
Right.
So he just seemed focused and concentrated, but he was in his head. He was inside. He wasn't paying attention to everybody else. But he wasn't grinding the whole time he was playing either. I'll guarantee that too. So those are just simple things. They're logical. I mean, today we have everybody worrying about keeping their stats and then trying to practice based on their stats. So the stat is, how many fairways did you hit? And the player's going, well, gosh, I only hit 9 fairways, so that means I need to work on my driver. So they go work on their driver on the range, and they hit it pretty good. But when they go back on the course, they still hit 8 or 9 fairways. So the issue wasn't physical at all. It was mental. It was probably arousal, ruining that driver swing that they worked on the range, because the outcome matters and they can't miss the fairway and they want to hit the fairway. So worrying about that stat while you're playing is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and really a good example in more recent modern times would be Tiger Woods. Earlier on in Tiger's success, if you look at some of his stats, his driving was really not that great by comparison to many others on the tour. But and if you look at most of his second shots were out of the rough, or certainly the first cut of rough, anyways. So he certainly wasn't hitting splitting fairways with every drive. So
how many shots did he win his
for
first
somebody
Masters
like
by?
Tiger Woods? Obviously, he had a very strong mental.
Well, we haven't worked with Tiger, and if we did, I probably wouldn't be able to talk about it.
12 shots, right?
Speculate.
Yeah.
I have to make a comment right there, Ted. How many shots did Tiger win the first Masters by? 12 shots.
Yeah.
All right. So now why is he changing his swing? Why is he going to work with all these famous teachers? He won by 12 shots.
Yeah.
He lapped the field. Okay. So that's where that golf industry machine approach, that logical thing, is so pervasive, so hurtful. Finally, we have Tiger now struggling to recover, to come back. Now, he's had physical issues. You got to adjust for that. But look at Tiger.
Well,
I see a player, and if you've been at a tournament watching him, you'll see a player that gets really focused to play a golf shot. He plays it, and then he relaxes between shots. He's not grinding about it. He's not. I'm talking about when he was in his heyday.
Right.
And he was really showing pretty good mental. And then players would say, well, gosh, what about the fist pump? Tiger's always giving it that big hurrah when he makes a good putt or whatever. At that one major, he followed that putt into the hole. Obviously he's excited.
Yeah.
Which goes counter to what we talk about, optimum arousal. Well, two things. First of all, you have to remember that Tiger is a businessman. Part of the reason people love to watch is they love to get emotionally involved. And if Tiger's doing the fist pump, it supports that. It makes people want to watch. It gets them excited. Now, is Tiger truly getting pumped up when he does that, or is he acting for the crowd? Because it's good for the business. I submit that's what's going on, with exceptions.
Right.
I'm going to run through this example really quickly. Most people remember that at one of the Masters, Tiger on Sunday missed the 16th hole to the left, which meant he had to chip up to the back of the green and let the slope and everything bring the ball back to the hole. You can't chip straight to that hole with the Sunday pin. So Tiger did that, and he made the chip. Everybody remembers the Nike logo on the ball, and then the ball falls in the hole. And the camera's on Tiger. Tiger's suddenly going, wow, man, he and Stevie are screaming at each other. They were surprised they made it. And he got wound up. But what nobody remembers is the next tee shot. The best player in the world, because he reacted, was no longer the best player in the world. He missed the 17th hole completely. His tee shot landed on the 15th hole, and he bogeyed 17. He then missed 18, and he bogeyed 18. That put him in a playoff with DeMarco, but he had enough time to calm down and recover from that reaction to then be able to play. He was, again, the best player in the world, but for those two holes, he wasn't. He wasn't even a 15 handicap.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say that Tiger tends to play with too much emotion. That's one of the 8 champion traits, emotional stability. And he tends to play a little too dominant, which is also one of the champion traits. The frequent winners did not measure high dominant, high aggressive. Cindy does. I think Tiger does. I think you'll agree Phil Mickelson does. And every now and then Phil Mickelson pays the price at aggressive play. He hasn't won a U.S. Open.
Yeah.
And his best opportunity at Wingfoot, he blew because he went too aggressive on that 18th hole on his second shot.
Yeah, I remember that. Twice.
Yeah, he didn't have to. And he would have given himself he probably would have had his career major.
And that also, John, that also affected him for quite some time after. I think he beat himself up pretty good over that. I think he realized exactly what you're saying is, that he went overboard, if you will, at that particular time, and it not only cost him the tournament, but it cost him really I think a lot more internally.
An opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Jon,
remember the first Masters that Phil won?
Oh, yeah.
He had 2 different drivers in his bag. He had a plan for playing the course. It wasn't just hit it as far as you can hit it. He had a driver that hit the ball, and he had a driver that drew the ball. And he played those. He had a plan, and he won nicely. When he plays with a good game plan, which is what we use to rein in that tendency to be too aggressive, he'll get his best golf, and he'll win. He's won a lot, but he's been living on the edge. Yeah, exactly.
Jon, unfortunately, we've pretty much run out of time. There's literally probably 1,000 more things that we would talk to you about. And Jon, I think Cindy and I would probably both agree wholeheartedly. We would love to have you come back on the program at some point when it's convenient for you, and we would love to continue the conversation. There's so many things that we can cover. But very quickly, if you want to, people know that I know that you and your wife Deborah have co-authored a book, The 8 Traits of a Champion Golf.
Champion golfers.
How can they get their hot little hands on that?
It's in paperback, and the best way to get it is on Amazon. And the book, it's not like a typical book. Most books, you got to figure out what part applies to you. In our book, we gave you self-tests for each one of the 8 traits and recommendations depending on which way you test it. So that you can apply these ideas directly to your game more effectively. So it's, you can probably get it for $12 or something, and we didn't hold back. It's there, that the ideas, the concepts, with examples of tour players, and the last point I want to leave you with is this stuff isn't just for tour players. It will help any golfer with any handicap, and I think the greatest opportunities are for your higher handicap players. If they would think better on the golf course, they would find 10 shots or more around just by developing their mental game. Don't worry about the swing so much. Don't worry about that stuff. Develop your mental skills, and the book's a great way to start. It's cheap, it's easy, and our website does have articles and things on it that would be helpful as well. GolfPsych.com.
GolfPsych.com. And for those instructors that might...
Psychology.
Right. For those instructors that are tuning into the program, if you're interested in learning more about maybe getting involved in some of the certification courses that are offered by GolfPsych, certainly visit their website at GolfPsych.com.
Yes,
and
there's an instructor area where they can see what's available. Mm-hmm.
Right, and I'm sure that Cindy will be more than happy to give a testimonial on that since she's just completed the certification program last week. Cindy, any final closing thoughts that you'd like to add as well?
No, I just want to thank Jon for being on the program and thank Jon and Deborah, Dr. Deborah Graham, for all that they have done in the golf world, and I wish I'd have met them 30 years ago.
I wish we'd all had this 30 years ago, Cindy.
Yeah, exactly. And we're
so
certainly going to be watching. Yeah, we're going to be watching Cindy over the next season just to see all the changes that are going to happen. We know that she's going to continue to do well regardless. But Jon, we want to thank Cindy and I both want to thank you for coming on the program today. We appreciate that, and I think we would certainly love to have you come back on again another time when it's convenient, and
I'd be
get into
happy
this a little
to come
bit more.
Back.
And maybe we can get some interaction with some of the listeners as well. But Jon, thank you very much to both you and your wife Deborah for putting together a great program.
Thank you very much, Ted. It was fun, and Cindy, we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Thanks, Jon. Okay, that concludes the broadcast. That, of course, was our guest, Jon Stabler, co-founder, along with his wife, Deborah Graham, Dr. Deborah Graham of GolfPsych, and you can get more information about that and about getting a copy of the book from their website, GolfPsych.com. Cindy and I, of course, want to thank you for taking this opportunity to join us this morning. For all of our listeners around the world for tuning into the Women of Golf broadcast, we look forward to having you join us here each and every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time here on blogtalkradio.com. And if you, for some reason, weren't able to tune into the full broadcast, If you wait a few moments, you'll be able to listen to the recorded version at blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf. Cindy, have a great week. Thanks for being here with me each and every week, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.